Hey, thank you once again for tuning in for installment number 5, week 5 tonight. We're thinking through the topic of awareness. If this is your Sunday night, you're viewing it at maybe the start of the week as this next 5th chapter is launched. But if it's not Sunday night for you, that's perfectly fine. Maybe you're doing this on an afternoon of a Tuesday or a Thursday. Maybe you're watching it at home on a Wednesday morning, or you're gathered around a coffee table on a Friday night with maybe some people from this church or people in your neighborhood, whatever it might be. But we're just happy that you are here and tuning in. I'm joined by my good friends Jimmy and Laura Newkirk. Many of you, if you're home folks to Coach Baptist Church, you know them. Jimmy serves as our associate pastor and is heavily involved in discipleship and the things that we're talking about over the course of these 10 weeks. But as you know, we've spent 4 weeks together, and here we are in week 5, and we're talking about the subject of awareness, thinking about if the fact that we would know who we would be, and then we would know that God knows who we are, and what it means to really know ourselves. If we know ourselves, we would argue from the chapter, we'll be better aligned, better equipped to live life on mission. So you've probably caught on by now, but this entire series is about missional living and about us understanding what does it mean to say equipping people for a life on mission. Well, part of that equipping is being aware of yourself, how God's made you, and all the rest. At the top of your page there, I'm looking here at the material, page 37, it says Hebrews 12, 1 through 2. Therefore, since we have been surrounded by such a large cloud of witnesses, and it goes on. So recognizing that we're not doing life in a vacuum, we're not doing life privately, but we're very much doing life not only in the public sphere and square, but with the eyes of God on us. And ultimately, that's a good thing. So as we just jump in tonight, I want to ask this precious couple about just the main idea of what they've been learning, if they could just kind of frame this thing tonight for you, make some applications, and then go from there. So Jimmy, I'll just let you jump in, man. If you want to share with us maybe the main idea, big picture, big topic for those, maybe they haven't even read the chapter yet. What would you say about this chapter 5 on awareness?
Such a big topic.
Yeah.
I love the idea of what we're being reminded of, what we're being taught, that God certainly knows all about us. Mm-hmm. And we need to see ourselves in light of who God is, but
That's
also
right.
in light of what God has done. Ultimately, being aware of God's meta-narrative, his big picture, throughout all of the scriptures, throughout all of time and eternity.
Yeah.
But even to this very moment, God has made us individually, and he's put us, and he's created us uniquely. Yeah. And as a result, we should need to be aware of how he's created us, but also being aware of his time and place that we've been placed in.
That's good. Like the fingerprints of God are on each one individually. There's no one made just like you, and that's really cool to think about. How there's no carbon copies that we say when we have kids. Parents say God broke the mold when He made you. Well, that's kind of true for everyone. That when God puts you on the planet, whether you're in Raleigh, North Carolina, or you're in China or India, or wherever you are, God knows you, sees you, has a purpose for your life. Laura, anything to add about main idea? Just thinking through the topic of awareness. What does it mean to be aware of who you are? Anything you want to add to that?
Well, I would like to mention, our personalities, our what we were raised in, our parent household. They all frame us with a certain type of story that could help
That's right.
others.
That's so good to think about the story of one's life where, God's all about divine appointments. And many times our story interacts and intersects with someone else's story. But also thinking about that we don't show up on the scene just randomly. That I'm a child of the 80s. We won't ask anybody else birthdays, but we're just thinking through 80s and 70s and all the rest, and just thinking through the fact that God allowed me to be born at a certain time in a certain place. I have a story that God is going to leverage for his mission and his glory. So, man, lean into that. Lean into the fact that God has put you on the planet on purpose. I like how you said the story. That's good. Think about lessons learned. I know we've probably already hit about a few of them. Any lessons, any key takeaways, specifically from the text, that you would encourage our viewers over the course of this week to maybe take note of? Maybe that they've already mentioned it, but maybe something you would say, don't miss this.
I love the two scriptures, the primary scriptures that are referenced in this chapter.
Yeah.
Hebrews 12, 1 and 2, reference also to Psalm 139, verses 13 to 16. And even along this line, Acts 17:26 talks about how specifically God has intended to place us in a time and in a place.
Yeah.
So we see that throughout the Bible. But I love how Hebrews specifically talks about how there is a race that's laid before us. We have examples, both in the Bible, both in our lives, both in church history, but there are examples throughout our life that we can learn from and model after. But particularly, I really love Psalm 139. It opens up by talking about how God knows all about us, knows our very circumstance before a word is on our mouth, or whether we're seated or standing, whatever. He talks about how we knit us together.
Yeah.
But then that psalm closes out by saying a prayer request to lead us in the everlasting way. Not only in terms of a process, the way, but that way is everlasting, today and forever. What a beautiful picture. From before we were born till after we're gone, this earth, he's got a plan. That
Concept of running your own race. I've heard Christians, many times say, if they're in ministry, they want to, I want to be the next Billy Graham, or if I'm a missionary, I want to be the next, Hudson Taylor, or, if I'm just a business owner, I want to be the next, philanthropist with headline news. And you have to step back and say, no, your race is not someone else's race. You be faithful to run your race and do so with eyes on Jesus for his mission. You don't think about someone else. There's a different capacity, different limitations, different resources, all the rest that make us frame our race set apart from someone else's. Appreciate you mentioning that. Any other lessons you would think, Laura?
Well, I remember the book asking about when you have had somebody or you have made an impact on somebody's life, and your experience is similar to somebody else's.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation with a person in our congregation. I consider a very godly woman, and I was explaining how difficult it is with your parents getting older and wanting their independence, but needing your help.
Right.
And she went through this whole story about her life and how it was just like I had been experiencing. And she lifted me up through what would end up being help for me to deal with it.
That's right. She was aware, you were aware, awareness intersected.
That's right.
Gospel, kingdom wins. I was thinking about the question I asked you both about what you can't miss, and something that I really love. I love the fact that this whole entire curriculum gives us a lot of fill in the blanks and things to practically do. But one in particular, not only in this chapter, but I think this will be one of my favorites in the entire study here, is on page 42. If you see it, list the top 5 most significant days or seasons in your life. And event 1, event 2, event 3, and so forth. The text tells us these should be the types of defining events that have radically shaped the trajectory of your life. And then it says, beside each of these defining moments, list at least one way you can see that event being useful in your efforts to declare and demonstrate those 2 buzzwords throughout the study: the glory of God. We won't have time to talk about this week, but you would, in your group or in your own personal life, thinking through those defining moments are very, very critical to how God is shaping. Sometimes it's been said, the mightiest or the weightiest hammer blow in your life, when God put a dent in your world, really is the very dent that is defining you for your mission. Thinking about next steps, thinking about things to do, just simply based off of this study that we've looked at, chapter 5. Any key responses, applications that you would say, man, because of this, I need to lean into this. I need to respond in this way. Anything you would want to say?
Go ahead.
Well, I would say the mission trips to Honduras were things that I could have been worried about, and I just didn't feel a spirit of fear. I went down there, and I know bad things happen to people, but I knew God was there and protecting us. And I was eager to go, and they were eager to have us.
There you go, leveraging your life. That's good.
I think there certainly have been times where God has. We were talking about gifts earlier. There certainly have been times where God seems to have used us in our giftedness, in our time, and in our place. But times where I've really grown the most is when He's used us in spite of ourselves.
Yeah.
Like whether we had gone through a series, a period of time where there is no human hope, or when sin seems to be dominating in our life. And God, one, overcomes those obstacles, even if they're our own creation. But He overcomes them for His glory. He doesn't need us. He's gifted us. He's put us in a time and a place with certain skill sets and certain abilities and certain dimensions to our life. But He chooses to use us in spite of ourselves. He's never needed us.
Hope y'all just heard what he said. That's massively important. Yes. Great word, Jimmy. Thank you, brother. God does not need us, but He invites us in to His mission.
And we should be aware of that.
We should be aware of that. Absolutely. Almost like we should be talking about awareness tonight. Last words, guys. Encouragement for those out there watching. Anything you'd want to say just to encourage people?
God loves us.
Yeah.
He didn't place us here to ignore us. He didn't wind up this world just to let it spin and go out of control.
Right.
He is absolutely just as sovereign today and just as concerned today as He was when we put all of us in place. We're here on purpose.
Amen.
We should be aware of that, aware of why, and be thankful, be used, be utilized.
Awesome. Laura?
Well, the ideas that come to my mind are the impact that I may have because I'm step out and I'm bold. I am not usually accused of not being bold, but even the food delivery we did on Wednesday nights or Wednesdays during the day, I had encounters with individuals that one either impacted me, and so or I impacted them. Mostly they impacted me, but to get to know people who we don't really see that often, it was really helpful.
Situationally aware of what God is doing. I've heard it said that God might be doing 1 million things in your life at a single instant, and we're aware of like 3 of them. That's really cool. Listen, thank you so much for joining us tonight, this week, whenever you may choose to watch this 5th installment of our study, Starting Point. We hope and pray that you have a very good week, and that you're aware of what God's doing in you, through you, and in the lives of those around you. Have a great week.